We don't want to be doing this bantering back and forth each day to all members of the committee. So with that, Representative Wintrow, please
Thank you.
address your question.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Could you please just speak generally? There are a number of things that have been raised about clergy being required to turn over sermons, bathroom issues, some of the other case law that you've been listening to. Could you please just provide some general information in particular about, maybe let's just start with the clergy and ask to be their sermons turned over and those kind of things. There are protections under the law.
Sir, before you answer that, I'm sorry, would you please state your name and affiliation for the record?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Richard Eppink. The last name is E-P-P-I-N-K. I'm the legal director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Idaho.
Thank you.
I do think that I haven't been able to hear all of the testimony during these so far second day of hearings, but I have heard some of it. As the lawyer for an organization that has, I think, and hope has been on the forefront of defending all of the rights protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and the Idaho Constitution, it would pain me to stand up and defend a bill that infringed on those freedoms. And I've spent a lot of time reviewing not only this act prior to amendment, but also the proposed amendment in House Bill 2. And there is nothing in here that would infringe those freedoms. This bill and the words that it adds to it simply extends the same protections against harm on private property that are already in the bill for a number of things that are not about groups or protected classes, but really about characteristics that we all share, regardless of what definition sexual orientation may have. I think we all have one, and regardless of the definition of gender identity, I think we all have one. And this bill protects against conduct that would cause harm based on those characteristics, however they may display themselves in a particular individual. So if there's particular portions of the bill, Representative, that you'd like me to address as far as to whether they would infringe on the freedom of speech or freedom of association, I'm happy to address those and provide my own analysis, but I have not found anything in the bill that would restrict the rights of clergy to say or think what they want at any time or at any place.
Representative Wintrow, do you have a follow-up?
Follow-up. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Would this bill require gender-neutral bathrooms?
Mr. Epping.
Madam Chair, Representative Wintrow, there is nothing in this bill that would prohibit single-gender bathrooms the same as they're provided currently in the state of Idaho.
Follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Doesn't the bill provide an exemption in the area of employment for religious organizations? And if so, could you please explain that?
Mr. Epping.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Wintrow, first of all, I think it's important to note that the definition of employer itself in this bill, as it has been for many years, is confined to only fairly large employers for the state of Idaho, 5 employees or more for a significant period of time. And then there are additional protections in the bill that specifically are aimed at religious organizations, and those exemptions go a long way, perhaps farther than constitutionally necessary, in protecting the freedom of association of religious organizations, and in particular, one of the limitations on the employment protections in the bill allows religious educational institutions and religious educational organizations to limit employment or give preference to members of the same religion. So the religious exemption in the case of employment in those cases is essentially coincident entirely with the constitutional right to freedom of association. If those religious educational institutions or organizations determined, they get to determine their membership, and therefore in determining their membership get to determine those people who may work for them.
Representative Wintrow, do you have additional questions?
Follow-up, if it's not too long. A couple cases were mentioned earlier, hitching post and so forth. I don't know if you have any other comments you'd like to offer there for clarity or explanation.
Mr. Epic, if you could keep them short.
Certainly, Madam
Thanks.
Chair. It's my understanding that the hitching post situation is resolved or approaching resolution to the satisfaction of everyone. I don't think I have any other comments other than that we already in this bill, the state of Idaho has been protecting organizations and individuals from harm under this bill and other legislation, whether it's being done on public property or on private property, and that includes one of the words that's already in this bill and has been, or already in this act and has been there for quite some time, which is against religion, which is also an important part of this bill. So I don't know. I understand the concerns from having many clients who are fearful of saying what they want and doing what they want, but I don't believe that fear is justified in the case of this bill any more than it has been for the many years that the act has been in place, protecting a number of other characteristics. I don't know if that answers your question, but I tried my best.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
This will be your final follow-up.
Thank you. It's a quick and easy one because it's especially at the ACLU. Can you tell me how this bill would affect individuals' freedom of speech?
Mr. Epic.
Madam Chair, Representative Wintrow, I think I already answered that, but I don't believe that this bill provides for any infringement on the freedom of speech or the freedom of association.
That was the nicest, shortest answer I've heard any person answer yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Wait, Mr. Epic, I believe we have an additional question. Representative McCrosty.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Empick, would you be able to provide a definition, a legal definition for sexual orientation as it would apply to HB2?
Mr. Epic.
Madam Chair, Representative McCrosty, I have the sense from the crowd that's here and from the way that the bill was amended that sexual orientation and gender identity need no definition the way many words in our Idaho Code need no definition. If the committee or the legislature were entertaining the idea of providing further specific legal definition of those words, there are, fortunately, extensive standards and analyses that are available from other states and other cities, and not only that, from the medical community that could provide ready definitions of those words. But I think we all understand what they mean, and if we don't, then I think there's many examples that could be used. I don't know if that answers your question or not, Representative.
Representative McCrosty, did that answer your question?
Just one follow-up, please.
Yes.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Epping. So the way that sexual orientation and gender identity, adding those 4 words to the Idaho Human Rights Act through HB2, would that follow the same standard that currently applies to race, religion, color, creed, religion?
Mr. Epic.
Madam Chair, Representative McCrosty, that would be exactly right. Perhaps your question is alluding to some other testimony, other questions that have come up during the course of this hearing that I have heard. I think a good example is a word that comes only 3 words before the intended addition in House Bill 2, which is creed. And creed is a word that is undefined in the statute and can mean a number of different things to many people. And in fact, creed, I know from some of the work that I've done, creed can encompass religious activity or desired religious activity that would violate other laws, other valid laws in the Idaho Code. And to my knowledge, this statute has never been interpreted to mean that because of the protections given to creed in the Idaho Human Rights Act, that allows for illegal activity in the name of a religion. And in fact, there has been litigation under Idaho's religious freedom laws to protect the use of substances, controlled substances that would otherwise be illegal to use in the state of Idaho. And so far, those plaintiffs and those criminal defendants have not prevailed in using religious freedoms laws to advance illegal activity. So if that is the gist of your question of whether or not sexual orientation or gender identity could be defined so broadly by the courts to allow this bill or this act to condone activity that was otherwise validly prohibited in the Idaho Code, I think the answer is clearly no.
Thank you, Mr. Epping. Next up.
Madam Chair, could I ask?
Representative Crane.
It's with fear and trepidation that I asked you this question because I'm hoping to get an answer similar to your last one to Representative Renthrow that is very short and concise. And the answer is, when you opened up your statement, you said that you guys represent a lot of individuals who feel like that their liberties or rights are being infringed upon. And so I'm sure you're probably familiar with the case that took place down in Houston, Texas, where the mayor and some folks decided to subpoena the sermons that pastors were preaching. What I want to know is, did your organization nationally, did you guys engage on that on behalf of those pastors whose rights were being infringed upon and had a chilling effect upon their ability to shepherd their flock?
Mr. Epping.
Madam Chair, Representative Crane, let me try to be as brief as I can.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to your exact question of whether there was any ACLU assistance provided to those pastors. I can tell you that in Idaho, if the same situation had happened and those pastors had come to me, I would have analyzed that case very closely. That situation gives me concern, great concern, over whether or not it was appropriate to subpoena those sermons, but that had nothing to do directly with the ordinance in that case. That had to do with a challenge to that ordinance, and that had to do, if I understand correctly, with a law firm that had decided that it would try through lawful discovery to obtain information that they would think would be helpful to their case. It does give pause. I will agree with you, it does give pause, but it provides no reason to consider when you're considering House Bill 2. That is an entirely different situation. This legislature has control over the lawful scope of discovery in civil cases, and that is what the Houston case is about. That case is not about putting our values of fairness and equality into our laws.
You have a follow-up, Representative Crane.
So yes or no, Madam Chairman, follow-up question. Did you guys engage on that on behalf of the pastors to protect their liberties, yes or no?
Mr. Epping.
Madam Chair, Representative Crane, the answer is the ACLU of Idaho I do not know whether or not any other ACLU affiliate or the ACLU National Office provided any assistance on either side of that case.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Mr. Epping.
Thank you,
We
Madam
have
Chair.
Representative Barbieri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Epping, you raise an issue that I'm curious about. If the situation that we're talking about in Houston had occurred here in Dallas, you would have reviewed the particulars of that case had the pastors come to you. Would the ACLU have stood up in court at no charge to defend that particular discovery?
Mr. Epping.
Madam Chair, Representative Barbieri, I haven't lived close to Dallas in a long time. I think you mentioned Dallas.
No, I meant to say that occurred in
Representative
Houston.
Barbieri.
Pardon me, Madam Chair. Please, pardon me. Mr. Epping, I meant to say that the occurrence in Houston, had it happened in Idaho, you said you would have reviewed it.
Mr. Epping.
Madam Chair, Representative Barbieri, yes, I would, and I don't know the answer to whether or not we would have made that decision. It is, from what I understand about what happened, it is something that would have made it to a very high level of review in my office and, to be honest with you, on my desk. Whether or not at that time, given the resources that we had and the other issues at hand at that moment, whether or not I could have responsibly committed my legal assistance to their benefit, I don't know. I can guarantee you, like every single person who writes the ACLU of Idaho, we answer every single letter, and if we cannot provide direct assistance, we provide the best information and the best referrals that we can. If it came up in Boise, and if it does come up in Boise, and I get a complaint about it, I can guarantee you, Representative, that I will review it, and I will review it carefully to make sure that everyone's civil liberties in this state are protected.
Representative Barbieri, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. And so, as a professional, do you recognize the cost component of defending, any individual defending their rights with respect to the effect of this bill?
Mr. Epping.
Madam Chair, Representative Barbieri, there are costs that come with all of the laws that this legislature makes, and those costs are borne disproportionately, unfortunately, across society. Our criminal code, probably the most of all, is one that imposes those disproportionate effects. There are costs on both sides of this bill as well. There are psychological and social and financial costs on the part of people who decide and elect to bring human rights complaints under this act already. And just the same, those costs are borne to some extent by the other side as well, and as well by our government in processing those complaints. That doesn't provide to me any reason not to place the values that we feel are important as a society into our law. That provides all the more reason to do so, because it gives people an opportunity to have a voice. Right now, we can't even adjudicate these cases to determine what is just and what is fair, and only by adding these words will that opportunity be given.
Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to yield a question from the representative of the Human Rights Commission, if they would come forward.
We're going to put the committee at ease, and we're going to have a little discussion.